All right, very good. This interview is going to be a bit difficult for me because the guests are my children. David Cao Pestano Coanda, Javier Muchas, as you all know, they're twins. You're not seeing double, right? They're identical twins. Hiaguas, as they say in Cuba, Morocho, I think that's what they call it in Venezuela. Cuates, I don't know if that's what they say in Mexico, etc., etc. Look, I haven't invited them out of family nepotism or anything like that, but because today, when I was talking about this crime in Utah, about the killer, about the capture of this alleged murderer, let's call him that, they told me a series of key points about what this young man's personality might be like, because they're practically the same age. This young man is 22, they're 23 years old, and as you know, several bullets were found that were marked with inscriptions, and I suspect that the one that was fired was also marked. And those bullets hold a number of secrets that are truly astonishing to me. Welcome, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very
much.
Thank you very much, Javier.
Likewise. You're welcome.
You're welcome. Here, their first language is English, like all the kids, right? But anyway, let's see here. I made a detailed list of all the names that were given to the bullets, right? The very first one on this list is called Belak Chao. So, Javier, what exactly does Belak Chao mean? Could you explain its meaning for us?
Well, David is the one who knows the most about this topic. Well, supposedly, that all started back in the 19th century, during a period when peasant women, who were often engaged in very hard and physically demanding labor in the rice fields of northern Italy, decided to use that particular song more or less as a form of protest. Later, after the conclusion of World War II and the defeat and collapse of the horrific, brutal Nazi and Mussolini dictatorship regimes in Italy, that song began to be adopted with modified lyrics as a sort of anti-fascist anthem. And then the communists, as we already know, started to use that same anthem for their own propaganda purposes, as if they were the great anti-fascists, when in reality, they are just another form of fascism.
Okay? So, in the Spanish-speaking world, it was recently made famous by the series La Casa de Papel. But it's very strange for La Casa de Papel to be in Utah.
Well, if it was dubbed into English, or if it had English subtitles available, and maybe the series gained some notoriety or recognition in the American world because of that. But even if the young man wasn't aware of that series, he could have learned about the existence of that song thanks to any ultra-leftist space he might have come across on social media or websites. That's my hypothesis.
However, another bullet says, "Hey fascist, catch this."
It's almost like it's a ball metaphor. Hey, catch this. Wow. It's like, hey, catch the ball.
In English, like the phrase said, do you have it around there? Well, more or less.
Yeah, I have it here. Let me see.
I mean, well, you know, let me see.
Fascist catch, right? It's like they're throwing a ball. Hey, catch, and there you go. But the ball is actually a bullet, right?
Okay, there's another one. Another bullet that has something more mysterious. And here we get into something interesting.
It's the same one. It's the same bullet from the catch. In the same bullet from...
The same catch bullet is the one with the symbols.
Yes.
There are some symbols of arrows pointing up to the right and 3 arrow symbols pointing down. What does...
Eso bien vi? Mean? That is, you go 1 step up, 1 step to the right, and 3 steps down.
What does that mean?
Well, it's actually a code that is related to a somewhat popular and well-known video game called Helldiver. This is because it's the second part, or the sequel, to the first one that was released earlier. It's a video game in the style where you can shoot, you know, with lots of action and excitement. It's a whole genre of games like that, where players engage in shooting and cooperative gameplay and shooters in English, where you can shoot and throw things. And in the game's story, you play as a soldier, a courageous individual from a planet called Super Earth, or sometimes referred to as the Super Earth. What?
That is.
Super Earth, which has a government that's supposedly a managed democracy, where there's supposedly democracy, but there's also manipulation of the results and people and the people, the soldiers who fight for that government, have to show an illogical and unquestioning loyalty to that system. And the reason the game has that kind of storyline is because the developers, the creators of the game, wanted to make a parody of fascism inspired by a 1990s science fiction movie called Starship Troopers. Back when it was released, some people thought it was a very pro-fascist film, but now people are re-examining the movie and thinking that it's actually a satire of fascism. And that code is a code to launch a sort of bomb in the game, like a weapon. The Eagle 500 is what they call the bomb in the game. And within the
game, the 500,
something like that. And in the game, kilogram unit,
kilograms such as currently, and in the game,
it's a powerful bomb, a truly powerful and significant weapon. So, in different parts of the internet, people are using the game codes to refer, maybe figuratively, as if they were indicating some kind of big hit or major impact. I'm not really sure how they're going to use it. An opponent that must be completely destroyed. That's what you told me earlier in the day, I mean. Yeah, this. Pay close attention to the connections. He's playing a game that's a parody of fascism. A parody of fascism. It has Bella Ciao, which is an anti-fascist thing. And again, the whole 500 kilogram bomb thing. Kilograms, which is already a symbol of an opponent that must be completely destroyed. Of course, maybe he never played the game, but he found out about the bomb symbol, the 500 kilograms, the up arrow, right arrow, 3 down arrows, the arrows, as a way to refer to that kind of opponent that must be completely destroyed.
Okay.
Assuming we're not mistaken.
Let's see, before we look at what the next bullet says. It's very interesting because we're talking to a generation whose codes we, who are older, don't understand. The codes they use in some way and the signals they're sending. And later we'll see where all this ends up. It's very interesting. There's a third bullet point, simply because there was one that actually had both messages that says something like, if you're reading this, you're gay. LMAO. What did that even mean, though?
LMAO, which stands for laughing my ass off. That is, I'm basically dying of laughter, but in a much more crude, informal, and exaggerated way.
No.
More profane, right? People typically use that expression to indicate that they're definitely dying of laughter. Side, to use that expression...
Right?
Sorry for the inappropriate language, but that's what it means.
That's what it says graphically, okay?
Yes, and sometimes people also use that expression as a way to indicate a sort of, well,
mockery.
A subtle form of mockery that often occurs. That it has a sense of sarcasm, that they're somewhat surprised. There are a variety of different ways you can use that expression, but it can often indicate that you're, having a laughing fit. Maybe you're genuinely surprised by someone or by something that someone is doing. Or perhaps you're making fun of someone in a playful way.
But the other one, like if you read this, you're gay. Someone out there said, well, but this is actually a leftist individual who's anti-gay. See that?
It could just be dark humor, plain and simple. Maybe he's actually pro-gay, but he loves that kind of dark humor, and maybe he's in a community where dark humor is used a lot. That's possible. That's very possible. The other possibility is that because that kind of ironic humor has also become very popular on the internet. The other possibility is that he thinks a form of more conservative leftism, so-called leftism, has been co-opted. Leftists have never been conservative. They've always wanted to destroy the family, etc., etc. But maybe someone convinced him that homosexuals are bourgeois, petty bourgeois, or something like that. That's another possibility. It's the least likely. However, possibly, the most likely, possibly. Look, it's that It's dark humor that he's using. He doesn't need to be convinced that homosexuals are bourgeois. Those prejudices don't just exist among the old, they exist among the young too. He can believe in that prejudice without any resentment or fear, and despite that, also have leftist ideas on other topics.
Let's see, but if he was indoctrinated to the left?
He says his parents are Republicans. The lawyer said so. I didn't know.
Maybe he must have been indoctrinated by the internet.
Exactly right.
The internet plays an important role, according to you all. That...
Yes. Yes. The most important thing is really him. When I read about the messages on the bullets, I wasn't surprised at all by the person. It didn't surprise me in the slightest. He's just one member of an archetype that has become very common in our generation, which is, what's it called? The terminally online person. Who is terminally online? But among the gen
They use the word terminal, like someone with a terminal illness.
Yes!
I mean, he's honestly really completely and utterly fed up with the internet.
Exactly. But even more specifically, he's an incredibly skilled gamer. No, he's one of those guys.
Why do you think
That, one of those kids. Because I've already read about the person, or about this type of person. The kind of guy who stays at home all day playing video games, spending the whole day on shady websites on the internet. Very possibly.
What's a shady website?
Chan is the most Chan. It's an internet forum where there's so little censorship and it's so anonymous, where people start posting pornography, neo-Nazism, all kinds of things. He doesn't really seem like a 4chaner though, because he's into the communist thing.
You think?
He's more of a leftist. And why?
Why do they think that?
Because 4chan actually has more reputation for being pro. Because
Do you all think he's a leftist? I mean, because of the type of victim or the things
that are on the bullets.
on the bullets?
Right? Yeah, that's clearly leftism. This particular guy is a leftist. But these gamers who are terminally online, who spend a significant amount of time on the internet, can actually be either left or right, just to be clear, but it's really the same archetype. The kind of person who's perpetually, almost constantly on the internet, perpetually playing video games, who has this deep spiritual emptiness inside, who's basically a shell of a human being, lacking any real sense of purpose. I mean, what they're absorbing, what they're taking in, is brain rot, stuff that literally rots your brain. You know what I mean? It's the kind of content that doesn't enrich your mind or soul, but instead just fills the void with meaningless distractions, leaving them feeling even more empty and disconnected from reality. You get what I mean? This guy didn't surprise me at all.
I think the biggest evidence of the rot, not just ideological, but in other areas too, will probably show up in one of the next points we're about to see.
What does he say? The next point is like a dialogue, right? From a play, I'd say. He noticed the bulge and the other one replies, "What is this?"
Actually, I'm the one noticing the bulge. Oh, what's this? This is actually a reference that he took either directly or indirectly from a comic book that was published and released in the year 2013, which was specifically making fun of or poking fun at people known as furries. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly are furries? Furries are... There are many different definitions and interpretations of what that is, but the most infamous and well-known members of that community are people who in some way identify with an animal and have a deep love for animals, as well as animal characters that look like humans, often depicted in costumes or whatever form they might take. However, they're also sometimes associated with zoophilia, which is a controversial and problematic topic. So a furry could simply be a guy who really genuinely loves Bugs Bunny and thinks he's a cool, interesting, and entertaining character. And that's definitely part of the definition, but...
The rabbit, no, the singer, the rabbit. The singer is Bad Bunny.
Yeah, the rabbit, but there's also another part of that community that's even more infamous, who love that concept of the human animal, but are also into sexual perversions. You know what I mean? And that original comic was making fun of that, and he kind of took a line from that comic, which is undoubtedly part of that dark humor, that ironic humor, that particular kind of humor that sometimes only people who are really deep into a particular discourse can truly understand, because these are memes that even we didn't know most of the expressions in those panels until we started doing the research, the investigation. Oh. Yeah, but the archetype of the gamer with brain rot, whose brain is rotting away, that's something anyone can recognize. Anyone can recognize that.
Exactly. Those are things that, well, of course, you guys are from that same generation. Because he noticed the bulge. What's this? About the bulge.
The bulge. That's part of the comic's dialogue. They're two guys who are drawn as perverts communicating over the internet, playing the roles of those animals, and one is playing the role of getting close to the other and notices a bulge and says, "Oh, whoa, what's this?" The "oh, woo" is also important. It's an O, a W, and another O that's in the comic and also in the bullet. And that "oh, whoa" is a facial expression. The two O's are like two eyes and the W is like a mouth, right? Capital O-W and capital O-O-O. But it looks like a surprised little face, like this. That appears in the comic to show something like, "Oh, I'm surprised." Maybe something like, "Wow, I'm so surprised, so fascinated, looking at the bulge you have in that thing related to sexual perversion." No.
I mean, it's a reference to that comic related to the community of furry animals, perversion, zoophilia, etc., etc. In 2 seconds, I want you to tell me what that platform is called. Discord? Discord.
That's the English word commonly used for referring to Discord.
Let's talk about it if you give me a chance. Very interesting what you're telling me. I don't know how you all see it, and I think it justifies the fact that I asked you to please come here if you've just tuned in. I had told you that they are my children. They're about to graduate with a degree in history from Florida International University at FAU. I learn a lot from them, and today I told them, please, you have to come, because they told me a series of things. Because when you're trying to figure out, is he left wing? Is he right wing? What kind of things has this man who committed this crime in such a brutal way done? And they told me, right? The clues are in what he wrote or the inscriptions he put on the bullets. And so I was amazed. The bullet that said Bella Ciao. The bullet that said, hey fascists, take this. The symbols, those arrows pointing up and down. That one was a reference to an internet game, which is the
one with the arrow, exactly. Well, it's not from the internet. I think it's one of those console games they sell, right?
You know, things like PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo. I don't know if they're on Nintendo, but Nintendos are a type of console, and maybe also on computers. The mere fact that it's a video game doesn't necessarily mean it's a game. On the internet, games are also their own programs you can download, but the rest are memes from internet culture. From the culture of people who spend 1,000 hours on the internet a day.
Come here, because they've made references that you say, in what was put in the bullets, there are references to memes.
Yes.
Why? What is the
memes? It's information that spreads through the internet, not necessarily a
meme, not joke.
Memes are a pattern that is often transmitted or disseminated to different places. That's the key. They existed for quite some time before the internet. For example, you can put a drawing on a wall, and then people, find the cartoon funny, and they start putting the cartoon in other places, etc. That's a meme. The internet, since it's a technology that supports the spread of information on a massive scale and at great speed, has made it easier for memes to spread. And that's where internet memes come from, which are like that. Memes can come in various forms. They can come in the form of an image with text, for example, a picture that includes words or captions overlaid on it, which helps to convey a particular message or joke. They can also come as a video, which might feature moving images, sound, and sometimes even music or voiceovers to enhance the comedic or informative effect. Additionally, they can come as comics with characters that are perhaps horribly drawn, or, on the other hand, effectively drawn, whatever it may be. They can also come from patterns written in text messages, in comments, or in public forums. Memes can exist in a wide variety of forms.
And what significance does the relationship between memes and this killer have?
It seems that the bullets, interestingly enough, apparently have memes associated with them. At least that is what has been suggested. However, these memes must be ones that come from a very small and specific subculture, meaning they are probably only familiar to a limited group of people who share certain interests or inside jokes. That reference, for example, to the furry animal comic is from a 2013 committee that no one has ever seen, that very few people must have seen. But he came to know about it, and he ended up referencing it. He even put that on the bullet.
Now, according to USA Today, it is reported that this young man was on a platform called Discord, which is an online social media platform. But the platform initially denied it, but now they said they had deleted it to cooperate with the investigation. What exactly is Discord? How much concern or worry has it caused investigators?
Well, there are several different types of platforms on social media, and some are more well-known, mainstream to use the English word, such as Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Reddit. No, Reddit is kind of semi-unknown, I don't think so. More
Well-known among young people, I think.
And there are also alternative platforms, some of which are ideological. For example, Truth Social, which was created so that Trump could have a platform on the internet without censorship. Or Blue Sky, which became a platform for leftists who didn't like Twitter. But there are also other alternative platforms that aren't necessarily ideological. And that's where Discord comes in. Discord is a platform that was initially created specifically for video game enthusiasts, that is, people who are fascinated by and passionate about video games, so that they could talk among themselves. At first, primarily through text, but later also with audio features. And then, as the platform gradually gained more and more popularity over time, and as the company continued to find and explore new and exciting opportunities, Discord began to expand its features and capabilities to have a wide variety of different uses and purposes that aren't necessarily directly related to its original intent or function. Government
To video
games. There are people who are fascinated by a wide variety of things that are involved on that platform.
I see that on that platform, there were also various writers, creative artists, and K-pop fans.
Well, fans of Peruvian pop. Yes, that would be interesting. Sorry.
Let's see, why is it actually called Korean pop? And why are there really so many followers?
Well, maybe we shouldn't finish the topic of Discord calls.
Right? Because I don't want to link K-pop with that killer. Because so far, I haven't seen anything connecting that guy to that kind of thing.
Well, actually, this platform also has K-pop fans. Discord.
Yes, Joe, maybe you... So I'm thinking about where you want to go, but I don't want to get into that topic because I think this man's story on Discord is important, and I don't think it's right to mix the two topics. What is
The story, why is this important? Explain to me.
Come on, explain it to me, David. You...
Join in a little too. Let's see.
Let's see. Well, go ahead and talk. This man has participated on Discord. He has made statements with his college dorm roommate.
He was at the university, then he left.
Yes, he was at that university in Utah, but he left. And so it was through those ongoing communications that the roommate gradually realized that this particular guy was a problem. And so the roommate started to do something about it.
Well, what the killer actually posted as a message on the online platform Discord, there were things that had some pretty surprising parallels when you look closely at the details of the murder. The detail related to, for example, a weapon that was wrapped in a towel, things like that. The FBI used
An angel that was wrapped in a
towel, a weapon, a
weapon. A weapon that was wrapped in a towel. Go on, go on.
And it appears to be that the FBI, or if I am not mistaken, various other law enforcement agencies here in this country, decided to utilize that as a clue to find the killer. And it seems it was a pretty successful lead because they found him.
But Carr says that...
Because they found the rifle, they found the towel, and the...
But this guy initially refused to admit that he was there.
Eventually, they changed what they said. I don't quite remember now if they initially denied it, but they did. I think they did. Yes, they initially denied it, but eventually, after some time, they said he was on the platform. However, there was nothing on the platform that would indicate or suggest the planning of that murder.
They also said, "We condemn political violence and we will cooperate with the authorities in every possible way." They also said that.
Yes, and they completely removed all trace of the killer from their platform.
All right, so you actually told me earlier, Javier, that this guy was really the common archetype of your generation.
Not of the whole generation, but of a part of that generation.
Why?
Because having read the various things and articles that I find on the internet sometimes, and now that I think about it more deeply, having come across and encountered some people, though they are older of course, and from a different generation, that type of person who spends practically all day at home or with their little group of friends or whatever, just hanging out, playing video games, with a kind of spiritual emptiness or void inside them, until they eventually become addicted to video games. In a way, people who are addicted to video games, but at the same time are also addicted to the internet and everything that comes with it. It's like a cycle where the internet and video games feed into each other, creating a situation where these individuals find it difficult to break free from either one. And so those things mix together and form a culture. And another thing that David found about the killer, which is also something, it's sometimes an archetype of those characters, but more so of serial killers, is that they said he's a quiet kid, a silent child, a quiet child. Sometimes many of those boys are not very socially competent or adept at interacting with others. They're a bit strange. Sorry for saying that, it's just the word that came to mind at the moment. Sometimes they're drawn to those kinds of things because they feel like they're part of a community, or because they feel that in those online communities, they're searching for a truth or filling the emptiness they have inside because of...
Did you guys by any chance actually know the person named Charlie Kirk?
No, but not personally.
But not personally. Did you know about him?
Yes.
Yes. He was very popular.
Super popular.
Yes.
He was really well known, right? Everyone liked him personally because of his debate tactics. But he was iconic, right? There was no doubt.
In your generation.
Right? Besides that, he was. The USA is actually a national organization with chapters at many different universities.
At Falun?
Yes, I have personally interacted with several members of Turning Point USA, and they've been really cool.
Which is the organization he founded.
Right?
And what were the ideas he defended, do you know?
Well, Charlie Kirk was, without a doubt, a pretty strong and unwavering conservative. He had absolutely no wavering or hesitation whatsoever in his deeply held beliefs and convictions. He possessed a very intense, almost unshakable religious devotion and commitment. He started the organization with a very strong, passionate, and determined defense of the free market, and of small government, and of the principle of small limited government. Kirk.
I also support that 100%. Yes.
Yes. And Kirk also had a very conservative perspective, in particular on LGBT issues and the transgender topic. Many of the students who debated him at universities debated with him about those kinds of topics.
And the fundamental accusations that are made against him. What would be some things that...
Well, from the leftists, I imagine all the accusations. Well, you don't even have to think about it. We already know that the leftists have accused him of being a fascist, but from the right, from conservatives, it's not so much because of his ideology, but maybe for smaller things, like his way of acting, or his way of...
What was it about his way of acting?
Well, supposedly. Well, David is the one who saw that. Negative comments, it wasn't me. Many believed that maybe he had a debating style that was perhaps a bit aggressive, but even his critics are in deep mourning, because even if he seemed very rough, he always debated people peacefully. He was never involved in any act of violence or aggression. And he was always consistently characterized as someone who genuinely wanted to find common ground and mutual understanding with others, even with those who disagreed with him.
How did you all experience it? The event of his assassination?
It was a truly horrible thing for this country that a political assassination of this magnitude took place.
Why do you call it a political assassination?
Of course, no one knows who. In the end, we don't know what the motives are. This young man has not been declared guilty. He hasn't been declared guilty, but it's part of the political violence we've already seen in recent years, which has been a major concern, even among young people. Let's remember that a few years ago, there was a young man very similar to this one, but instead of killing Charlie Kirk, he killed some black people in a supermarket. This young man was Peyton Gendron, a high school kid who had been on 4chan, that website, and he also planned the murder through a private server on Discord. Exactly, he was on 4chan, absorbed Nazi nonsense on 4chan. His real concern was Jews, but he killed black people because that's who was in front of him.
So do you think there are sites and
Luigi Magnon also made a reference that not everyone understands. He posted an image of a Pokemon. He posted a picture of a Pokemon trying to send a secret message through that.
you mean the person who was responsible for killing the chief executive officer of United Healthcare, right?
Yes.
So you're actually telling me that there are really websites brainwashing young people?
Exactly, yes. Without a doubt, yes. But not only on esoteric platforms like 4chan, even on places like Reddit and X, Twitter, there is, unfortunately, a considerable amount of incitement to violence. And there are many people who openly support that political violence, even against right-wing figures such as Charlie Kirk. I think a significant part of the reason this murder happened was because of the political violence against conservatives that was being incited on those platforms. Charlie Kirk was a martyr for Christianity, in addition to being a victim of political violence.
Well, thank you both very much for giving us a different perspective.
To conclude, I want to share a message about the importance of maintaining appropriate order, which Charlie Kirk himself posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, this summer. This message is, perhaps unexpectedly, quite relevant for this occasion. His optimism saddens me because we know he was murdered. It's very tough to accept, but I believe that if we work to change the future, to eliminate the horrors of political violence, and to fight for freedom, we can, in time, reclaim that optimism. He wrote, "When things are moving very quickly and the pace of events seems almost overwhelming and people around you appear to be losing their minds or acting in ways that do not make sense, it becomes especially important to keep your feet firmly on the ground. In moments like these, staying calm, maintaining your composure, and holding on to a sense of stability can help you navigate the chaos and make thoughtful decisions. Turn off your phone, read the scriptures, spend time with your friends, and remember that the fury of the internet is not real life. Things are going to be okay." I know that many in the audience are not necessarily religious, but I believe that even so, there are several things he wrote that we can take into account so that we don't fall into that extremism.
Well, that's all. Thank you very much to David. And many thanks to Javier for this youthful perspective on a young killer that we've tried to understand from a generation that is the same as yours. And well, more news and more information will come out that will help us understand what has happened. And as David says, try to prevent it from happening again, something that unfortunately is becoming more and more difficult.